The taste of asparagus is often associated with spring. It's one of the first vegetables that we get, and it's got a lot of good flavor to it. If you want to keep that spring flavor for the dead of winter, you need to use the proper techniques for freezing now. It's really fairly simple, but there's some things that people do to try to make it a little too simple. It's very important that you blanch asparagus before you put it in the freezer, as with most vegetables, because there will be bacteria on there that will continue to operate in freezer temperatures that will cause the food to deteriorate. Now, the form you want to use to put it in there is up to you, depending a little bit on how you're going to use this when you take it out of the freezer. If you're going to use it in spears, leave it in spears. If you're going to use it in pieces, then we're going to go ahead and cut it up. This I'm going to use in pieces later on. So we're just going to simply cut it into the size of pieces that we would use. You would need to have prepared your asparagus as you would normally prepare it for eating up until this point, so that you would have broken it or snapped it at the point where it breaks easily, and make sure you wash it well. Now, to blanch it, there are three ways that you can blanch. One is to submerge in boiling water, and that's the method that we're going to use today. Another would be to steam blanch, which is simply holding it over hot water. The third way is microwave blanching. Microwave blanching is the least effective of the methods because microwaves don't heat evenly. You have some cooked parts that are cooked too much, some that are not cooked enough. So the steam blanching, submerged blanching are going to be the best choices. We're going to simply submerge this in hot water for 2 minutes. Whether you're steam blanching or boiling water blanching, you start timing the minute you put it in the water or over the water, so that this will go into the pan, and we set our timer at that point. As soon as the 2-minute time is over for blanching, we need to take the vegetables out and submerge them in ice water. And you need to move them around a little bit because we want to get the cold right to the center as quick as possible. We want to stop the heating because too much blanching or too much cooking can do just as much damage to the flavor as not enough. This is one of the things that a lot of people have not done in the past, is to chill it down quickly. That's what's causing them to have some lower quality produce when they blanch than when they don't. Okay, once that is completed, let that sit just long enough to chill it down. Then we need to drain that real well. Okay. Now our next step on this is going to be to put this, let it dry just a little bit, and then put it into the freezer containers. You have several choices when it comes to freezer containers. You can either use a hard-sided, such as we have here. You can use plastic freezer bags, either Ziploc or twist tie. Make sure that you use the type that are made just for freezing, rather than just the type that you use for sandwiches. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to keep them sealed well enough, and they will dry out and get freezer burn. Now, as far as actually putting this in here, it's basically a matter of simply transferring the food into the freezer container. And you can see that one of the other benefits to blanching is that it softens it up a little bit so that it's going to pack a little bit nicer, a little bit more efficiently. Now, there's no rule of headspace that's quite as stringent as with canning when we're talking about freezing. If you don't have quite enough, what we recommend that you do is we want to fill up as much space as possible. So we're going to shake it a little, just lightly tap it against your hand so that you get it down as much as possible and the little holes taken up. Then to fill up the rest of the space so that we'll have as little air in there as possible, we're going to crumple up some wax paper. You don't need to crumple it up real tightly. And then just set that on top of the asparagus, put the freezer lid on, and seal it down. Now, when this goes into the freezer, you need to make sure that you don't have a lot in the freezer at any one time, that you have some space around it so that the air can come back to the center of it and allow it to freeze as quickly as possible. Put it in the coldest part of your freezer, turn your freezer down ahead of time so that things will move along. The faster it freezes, the better the quality will be. Later on, you can come back after they're solidly frozen and stack them up and put them together a little bit more closely. Now, one trick, if you're going to use the bag type, one trick I can give you, because we also want to get as much air out of these as possible, we'll put the asparagus in here, and this will work with any other kind. Now, this is obviously a much larger bag than you'd need here, but seal it most of the way, and then put a straw in the corner. And you simply inhale. That pulls most of the air out, and you can close it down. Then you can fold that over, and you'll have a much better quality product. The more air you get out of a plastic bag or out of a freezer container, the better quality it will be for the long period of storage. These will keep for about a year in your freezer, so that even in January, February next year, you'll be able to have that taste of spring.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.